I'm Susan Wingrove-Reed, Words on Music, and boy, do we have something exciting coming up with your Anchorage Symphony Orchestra, a tribute to iconic film composer John Williams. And the orchestra's excited, the community buzz is starting to happen, and I hope that you're on track to get your tickets so that you do not miss this unforgettable evening of glorious music and a tribute to a life well lived and still being lived. John Williams is now 91 years old and still going strong in the arts field. So yay, Mr. Williams. So first, a little bit of biographical information about John Williams, and then I'll give you a few kind of hints about some of the pieces that you can expect to hear at the concert. Williams was born in 1932 and has had a career of over 7 decades in the arts. His popular, memorable, and classic film scores are basically a history of the movies in the mid to late and 20th century and early 21st century. His unique sound mixes romanticism, impressionism, complex orchestrations. He's won 25 Grammy Awards, 3 Emmys, 5 Oscars after 54 Oscar nominations. The Star Wars soundtrack, which we all know and love, is now in the National Recording Registry as a historic film score. And he has written scores to 9 of the top 25 highest grossing films in the United States box office. So a little bit about his life. His parents ran a department store, and in 1948, they moved to Los Angeles, where he eventually attended UCLA and got involved with the jazz band. He joined the military in 1951, the Air Force Band, and played piano and brass instruments and did some arranging. Following his service, he moved to New York City and attended Juilliard, where he intended to become a concert pianist. After hearing Van Cliburn and others similarly famous names in that field, he opted instead to change his major to composition, saying, "It became clear that I could write better than I could play." He played piano in jazz clubs to make some money, and then he ended up moving to Los Angeles as an orchestrator for films, where he worked with Henry Mancini on movies like Peter Gunn and Charade. At first, he was known as Johnny Williams, and he released several jazz albums. But then he wrote his first score for a film in 1958 with the lovely title of Daddy-O. He then wrote music for Gilligan's Island on TV and Lost in Space, and he won his first Oscar for his scoring of Fiddler on the Roof for the film version. Robert Altman, a famous director who was known for giving actors free rein, had a similar approach to working with Williams, telling him, "Do whatever you want, do something you haven't done before." And that led to a trinity of epic disaster films with glorious music: The Poseidon Adventure, Towering Inferno, and Earthquake. I'd like now to describe an incident where he met for the first time with a very young Steven Spielberg. He said it looked like he was about a 17-year-old kid, this very sweet boy who knew more about film music than I did. We had a meeting in a fancy Beverly Hills restaurant arranged by movie executives. It was very cute. You had the feeling Steven had never been in a restaurant like that before. It was like having lunch with a teenage kid, but a brilliant one. Moving ahead, he ended up working with this young artist on a film called Jaws and came up with one of the most memorable movie themes of all time. Da-dun, da-dun. And at first, when he had presented this as an example to Spielberg, he thought he was playing a joke on him. And he couldn't quite imagine how this was actually going to play out in the movie. But he went along with it, buying into that Altman philosophy of give this person free rein and see what he can come up with. And Spielberg eventually agreed to that simple theme. Sometimes the best ideas are the simple ones, he said. Hitchcock, who was another of my favorite film directors, his final film, Family Plot, involved John Williams doing the score for that. So just a little historical film note. Spielberg recommended Williams to his friend George Lucas, who needed a composer for a 1977 space opera that would be called Star Wars. Williams delivered a grand symphonic score influenced by Gustav Holst's The Planets, as well as the music of Dvorak and Strauss and many others. The Star Wars theme is among the most widely recognizable in the history of films and won an Academy Award for Best Original Score for Williams. From 1980 to 1993, Williams has served as the Boston Pops Orchestra's principal conductor and now is kind of a maestro guest conductor. And he's also makes annual appearances with the LA Philharmonic at the Hollywood Bowl. He was made an honorary Marine at the conclusion of his 5th concert with the President's Own Marine Band at the Kennedy Center in Washington, D.C. in 2023. Interesting note about how we age and how we view ourselves in the arts world with our increasing knowledge as we get older. In 2022, Williams announced that Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, which was released in 2023, would likely be his last film score, as he planned to retire from film and focus on composing concert music. However, a year later, he has reversed that decision, saying, I know I'm 91, but I have at least 10 more years to go, so I'm going to stick around for a while. And he said, I don't care music for grand statements that are firm and finished by closed doors. If a film comes along that I'm interested in with a schedule that I can cope with, I won't rule it out. Everything is possible. All is before us. Only our limitations are holding us back. Or to put it more simply, I'm just going to keep an open mind about the final years of my life. Bravo, Williams. So at our tribute to John Williams, here are a few of the pieces you can expect to hear and just a little bit of tidbit information to whet your appetite. The concert will begin with the Superman March. There had been an attempt to hire Steven Spielberg to direct this movie, but he was just finishing his Big Fish movie, Jaws, and so a different director was hired. Jerry Goldsmith was going to do a bit of the scoring, but then he backed out because he was working on Planet of the Apes, the very first one of zillions. So John Williams was hired. And the theme from Superman, which you will hear at our concert, is first heard during the opening credits to the movie and has been reused with every Superman film since, with the exception of Superman 3. Of course, we cannot do a program about Williams without featuring music from Jaws, so you will not be disappointed and get to hear some of that famous low playing. And Spielberg would say that he went on to believe that because of the brilliance of that theme and the score in total, that half of the success of that movie was due to John Williams' music. You're also going to hear on this program the Olympic fanfare and theme from the 1984 LA Games. This is historically important music because John Williams refers to LA as his home, and it was only natural that the organizing committee of the Olympics would turn to their most famous composer when they decided to commission a fanfare for the games. And there had been some pretty famous music that had been repeated for many years, and he knew he had a big task ahead of him. And he said, I'm not an avid sports fan, and I've never attended the Olympics, but from watching on television, I gained a feeling that I aspired to make the theme of the fanfare. These young athletes are straining their guts to find and produce their best efforts. The human spirit stretching to prove itself is also typical of what musicians attempt in a symphonic effort. It is difficult to describe how I feel about these athletes without sounding pretentious, but their struggle ennobles all of us, and I hope that I expressed it in this piece. I will segue to a personal comment. I was having a talk with another musician in the symphony recently. We just received our folders for this concert to start practicing the music, and we were both sharing how extremely difficult this music is. Every single piece, there's not anything to kind of just gloss over or throw away. So there's a lot of hard work that is now in progress with your orchestra musicians as we get ready for this incredible evening to do tribute to this incredible composer. So another film that we absolutely would have to include on a tribute is highlights from Jurassic Park, often considered to be one of the most iconic and beloved scores of Williams' career. He described it as a rugged, noisy effort, a massive job of symphonic cartooning. And he said that trying to match the rhythmic gyrations of the dinosaurs, he ended up creating a series of kind of funny ballets. As with another Spielberg film that you'll hear some music from, Close Encounters of the Third Kind, he felt he needed to write pieces that would convey a sense of awe and fascination, given that the movie dealt with the overwhelming happiness and excitement that would emerge from seeing live dinosaurs. In a change of pace, we're also going to feature music from a stunning film, Schindler's List. In 1993, he was approached by Spielberg, and it proved to be a huge challenge to do the music. After watching a rough cut, he said to Spielberg, I can't really talk about this. I'm devastated. Do you remember that the end of the film was the burial scene in Israel of Schindler, and it's hard to speak about it? I really think you need a better composer than I am for this film. Spielberg replied, I know, but they're all dead, thinking of classic composers throughout history. So Williams asked violinist Itzhak Perlman to play the main theme for the film that he was to write. And Williams earned his fourth Oscar for Best Original Score, his fifth Academy Award. Close Encounters of the Third Kind features some of Williams' most complex and modernistic writing. Lots of extended orchestral techniques and tonal music versus atonal. This came out in 1977. While Star Wars is well known for its retro symphonic mode, Close Encounters is a more complex musical structure. It's the key to the communication between humans and aliens. And a 5-note theme serves as a nonverbal link, and it appears throughout the movie. And the lyricism serves as the climax of one of the most transcendent sequences that you will encounter in any film of any period. Speaking of Close Encounters of the Third Kind, the movie E.T. is a personal favorite of just about anybody who's ever seen it. Came out in 1982. There are almost 80 minutes of music in this movie, and the full score is over 500 pages long. This is, in Williams' estimation, his greatest work and also the greatest film score of all time, an opinion that is also shared by Steven Spielberg. While an equal case can be made for other movies, there is just, this music is simply life-changing. He related in a documentary that the film seemed wonderful to me, but I think the surprise that it was as successful as it became. But it's absolutely right that the music is so appealing to establish the compassion and the love between human children and the ET character, and then also striking a chord with adults for a number of other reasons. E.T. broke box office records to become the highest grossing film of all time, beating Star Wars, a record it held until Jurassic Park came along with thunderous footsteps. So, of course, we have to do some music from Star Wars. Cannot avoid doing this. There's just too many on the list that are of all-time greats. Giuseppe Verdi, the Italian composer from the 19th century, once said, "Let us turn to the past. That will be progress." And that is what John Williams did with his score to Star Wars, and why it's so important in the history of film music. Hugely popular, it's a milestone because it was instrumental in reviving the musical style of the golden age of Hollywood from the 30s to 50s, and was seminal in boosting new interest for the art of symphonic film music. Episode 4, A New Hope, which was, some of us older people remember it as just Star Wars, but now there have been a series of new prequels and sequels. The music for the very first Star Wars film culled the works of musical masters like Beethoven, Bach, and Tchaikovsky, among others. And then after Spielberg had also recommended Williams to Lucas, Williams delivered the most iconic horror score since Psycho for Jaws, and then was told for Star Wars, do that, but make it better. So his grand symphonic Star Wars title is the most recognizable of his work, and the other compositions that are part of the score are just equally ambitious in scope. And I'll tell you what, we are having to practice really hard because this music is very challenging, but everyone loves it. Everyone also recognizes it. So your Anchorage Symphony is committed to making sure we do justice to our performance. There are several other pieces that I will leave you to discover when you attend the concert and see the program in front of you. But I do have to make sure that in our mini chat today, I mentioned that we will be doing some of the film music from Harry Potter. And it brings back so many fond memories of our maestro Randy Fleischer, who pre-COVID led our orchestra through the live film music with seeing the movie, which was just a stunning experience to be a part of and to hear the reaction of the audience. The Harry Potter music is really profoundly touching and magical, as was intended by its composer. Williams scored the first 3 film adaptations of the Harry Potter series. And the most important theme, the first one that came for the films, was one I personally love because it's one of the best Celeste solos of all time after you look at the Nutcracker and the Sugar Plum Fairy, but it's Hedwig's theme. And this theme was used in every film, even when Williams wasn't the head of the scoring. 2001 was when the first Harry Potter film came out, The Philosopher's Stone, and he was drafted to write the first score in LA and then completed the soundtrack in London. It may come as a surprise to learn that he wasn't necessarily going to be a part of this project, but Warner Brothers needed some music for a promotional short and asked him to come up with something, which the something turned out to be Hedwig's theme, which he composed without viewing any footage of the film. This magical cue built around the tinkling celeste is the music most closely identified with the film. Well, I hope this overview has given you an opportunity to marvel at your own memories of films you have seen and the music that inspired you as you watched the action, and how closely the music fits the dynamics of the plot and the developments, etc. Williams is absolutely an iconic genius, and we are so lucky we are still able to live with him in his lifetime as he continues to produce masterpiece after masterpiece. Looking forward to having you in the concert hall with us for our tribute to John Williams. We're excited to see you there, and make sure you get your tickets. It's going to be a very joyful evening, still in the darkness as we move towards more light in spring. Thanks for supporting your Anchorage Symphony Orchestra, and I'll see you in the concert hall. And a reminder, you need to come early to the concert because it's more than a concert when you come to the Anchorage Symphony Orchestra. It's an event.